Hello, good evening, and welcome to World Talks, where every word matters. My name is Don Arliff. The majority in the Parliament of Slovakia has passed a controversial bill reforming public media. The national TV and radio broadcaster RTVS will be restructured and rebranded into SRTV. Management and employees are protesting while the government says the deep changes to public media are badly needed. Now, joining me here to discuss these developments in Poland's southern neighbor is here in the studio, Piotr Kaczyński, EU expert from the Geremek Foundation. Hello, welcome.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. And also joining us remotely is Rasťo Kužel, a media and election expert in MEMO 98.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for joining us. Very much appreciated. So these, let's go. We're going to start off with a soundbite. We had a guest earlier speaking to us here on TVP World, Daniel Barta. He's the president of the Center for the Euro-Atlantic Integration and Democracy. So let's listen to what he had to say in his comparisons of what's going on in Slovakia to Hungary.
So far it concerns only public media and not a wider occupation of the media landscape at all with different instruments. I don't think in case of Slovakia or in case of Poland such developments are possible because it's much more works as a proper market and media market, and in some sense the private stakeholders are much stronger than they were in Hungary. So therefore, I think the development in that sense are not as deep or overwhelming, but definitely it should raise some concern how they reorganize the state media. Obviously, we have some expectations which directions it will go, but we will have to see the final set of the operation of the new board and also the daily operation of the media. How much it will be used for pro-government communication and propaganda on a actual basis.
So we see the changes, obviously the severe situation that is in Hungary, but we look at the situation in Slovakia. Is it potentially going to be so dire like it is in Hungary?
Well,
Piotr, let's start with you.
Right. Well, we don't know, of course, how it's going to be because every country has their own case, right? So we'll see how it's going to be in Slovakia. But of course, we have to be super careful because we saw what was going on in Poland in the past with Lex TVN. We are seeing what's going on in Hungary. What is going on when the let's say right or far right politicians are saying we need more pluralistic media landscape, and then they are trying to shut down everybody else. This is what happened in Hungary, for example, that pretty much nobody can speak if you are not pro-governmental. A bit like
well, yeah, there just simply it doesn't exist, right? A lot of independent media outlets. Now, Rasťo, what's your opinion on this? How severe do you think that this shakeup of the public media there in Slovakia is going to be?
I think it's really a black day for independent public media here. And I would perhaps just add to what Daniel said before. I would just say that this does not only refer to public media, but we have also experienced pressure vis-a-vis the private media. As we speak, there is no political talk show available any longer. So this is a wider sort of approach, and when it comes to the public TV, I think the irony is that the word reform was used also in your report. I don't think there was any reason to reform the public broadcaster. There was no evidence whatsoever that the public TV was biased or was not objective. So I would really question the actual rationale or reasons why the government decided to abolish RTVS and actually establish this new broadcaster.
Well, do you think that it's potentially because, I don't know, the narrative didn't quite fit with the government? Maybe there was too much criticism of the government? What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's also fair to say that RTVS, it's according to the latest survey, 28% of respondents considered their news to be most objective. But at the same time, I wouldn't say that it was highly critical of the incumbent government. I think the only and main reason was to get rid of the current director, who would certainly oppose any moves towards building a more government-friendly broadcaster which would be ready to sort of spread pro-government propaganda, which I'm afraid is the main aim behind this change and the main aim behind the newly established broadcaster. But of course, I think it remains to be seen, how this broadcaster will be governed and what will be the content.
And what are they saying about the media staff at the moment? Those that work for the national broadcaster and radio, will they stay on according to the government? Will they protest and leave? What are the expectations?
Well, here I should say that we really have seen a very sort of heroic battle. Over 1,200 employees of RTVS signed a protest letter against these changes. There was a protest on Wednesday. There was a protest on Thursday, of these employees. But obviously in Hungary, it took a couple of years to sort of normalize the situation until we reached the point where the television is very much pro-government. Here it remains to be seen how many people will resign, how many people will eventually, silence down or will basically agree with any changes with the editorial policy.
Right. Now, Piotr, we've had here in Poland, obviously, a very turbulent media landscape for several years now. Ironically enough, the Slovakian government is actually comparing their shakeup of the public broadcaster to what happened just a few months ago here in Poland in December. And I say ironically because I think they vastly contrast.
Right, because this is really like cynical, right? It's about the problem here is who's the victim? The victim is independent media. And this is the problem in Slovakia. It's like the same mindset that is saying in Slovakia, are you with me or you're against me? There's no room for independent media. And this was the problem with the Slovak public broadcaster, that they were too independent. It wasn't, they weren't going biased against the Slovak government, pro or anti. They were simply too independent. And that was the problem. And that was exactly the problem with the old TVN, that was too independent, which is a private broadcaster in Poland. But with the TVP, the old TVP, there was a very different story. It was a situation where it was a propaganda machine, and then there was a takeover from the old regime to an attempt, we'll see with time, how independent a TVP truly will be. Which is not that easy, we know. For example, the TV we're in has this for 6-7 months now, the statement that we are actually, this company is in a state of being almost dissolved, right? So this is not that easy process where you try to recover and build up again independent media.
Well, and there's lots of parallels and potentially lessons to be learned. Now in Slovakia, when you look at the media landscape here in Poland and you see the changes here to the public broadcaster, I was going to ask you about Lex TVN as well, but what kind of lessons can you learn from watching the tumultuous turn of events here in Poland over the last decade or so?
I mean, let me first completely agree with Piotr that the biggest victim is independent journalism, and at the end of the day, it's actually the viewer, who will suffer. And this is something which, to be fair, it has to be said that all previous governments attempted to somehow control the public broadcaster. So it has never been able to be fully independent. But the current change actually means that the broadcaster will be under a more strict government control with the establishment of this new council, where 5 members will be directly appointed by the ministries of finance and culture. And I think this is what I think is really irony, that should the government lose the next election, it will be then the next government that will have the same possibility, and then it's like a vicious circle, So I think we should really, in changing the legislation, we should really foresee more independent journalism and not stricter government control, which is exactly against the new European media law.
Certainly, and the new European media law doesn't take effect till next year. I wonder what effect that is potentially going to have on these sort of takeovers, if you will, of public broadcasters, because that's why the legislation was brought up in the first place, correct?
Precisely. I think this is again just what I can say. It's ironic that this legislation was mainly designed because of the situation, the previous situation in Poland, the current situation in Hungary, to prevent this type of takeovers. But as you see, we unfortunately have that situation again in Slovakia.
Now, going back to Poland, of course, this is something that happened and had to be undone, right? So you had the government sort of take undue control over the editorial staff and the direction of the public broadcaster channel, and then the new government stepped in to undo these changes. Where do you think we are in that process? You mentioned we're in a state of liquidation officially. But where do you think we are in the reforms of this process here in Poland? Do you think the government has done enough to make it independent and bipartisan?
It's a challenge. I think it's a challenge because this cannot be government's job to create independent media. That's not how it's going to work. How it's going to work is that you have to provide, as a legislator, zone for this medium to arise, to be built up independently of government. It cannot be that old masters were putting their little puppets and they were controlling what they are saying, and then new masters come in and we don't like old puppets, we have new puppets to control the same way. You have to create a zone, you have to take a step back to allow this free media, independent media, to recreate grassroots recreation of this independence of a public broadcaster, which is always a challenge because there's so much temptation. It's kind of Orwellian, if you will, that you should be able to control. If you control the media, you control the public.
Well, politicians, they have their way of, doing one thing during a campaign and doing another thing when they get into voice. Now, Rasťo, I'd like to give you final say here. We're almost out of time, so very briefly, your hopes for the days and weeks ahead concerning these reforms. What are going to be the most important things for Slovakia to maintain control of, for instance?
Well, I think I think we have really learned some lessons. From the case of Hungary, from the case of Poland. I think what is unprecedented is the sort of rebellion from the side of journalists. So I think I really hope that we can continue fighting for our freedoms here and really appreciate any international attention as you have given me today. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Rasťo Kužel, media and election expert, MEMO 98. Thank you very much for joining us today on TVP World, and Piotr Kaczyński, of course, from the Geremek Foundation, EU expert. Thank you very much. I could do this all day long. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes this edition of World Talks. Thank you for joining us, and stay with us for more on TVP World.